Well, January 1st, workers here in Colorado making the minimum wage got a raise. Since Colorado voters approved Amendment 70 in November, the wage jumped from $8.31 to $9.30 an hour at the first of the year, and it will go up an additional 90 cents in each of the next 3 years, reaching $12 an hour by 2020. Mitch Jelniker has more on who this increase should help.
Thanks, Ann. Joining us today is Dr. Jennifer Greenfield. She's from the Graduate School of Social Work at the University of Denver. So, Dr. Greenfield, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You authored a study on Amendment 70 before we got to the election, before it all passed. What's the bottom line here? What did you find and how this might impact our economy in Colorado?
Yeah, well, the goal of the study was to really investigate whether this would be a good thing for Colorado. So taking a good hard look at the data and coming up with some objective answers before we voted on it. And we found that, in fact, it would be a good thing for Colorado. And so we discovered that it would probably increase our GDP by about $400 million, and that about 420,000 people would benefit by receiving wage gains.
By the time you got through that study, did it change your opinion on the minimum wage, either for or against?
Well, I went in with an open mind because I really was interested in finding out. One of the questions that we addressed was whether people would be inadvertently harmed because they would lose their public benefits that were helping to keep them afloat but not getting enough income to maintain. And in fact, we found that that was not the case, going up to $12 an hour.
Right.
So.
And you have a certain focus you have in your department on women and how they're faring in our economy. What did it say about women in the minimum wage in Colorado?
Well, one of the interesting things about the minimum wage is that more than 50% of those making minimum wage are women, and many of them have children. And so this is actually a boost for women and their families, and this would actually increase the household income for about 200,000 children in Colorado.
So when it was all said and done, were you surprised by the findings at all?
I was. In fact, you know, one of the interesting things is there's this myth that the minimum wage workers are teenagers, and so we're just going to be giving more pocket change to the teenagers, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, and it's nice to have teenagers out at the mall spending their money, right? But at the same time, we found that 85 to 90% of the people who receive minimum wage are over the age of 20, and so this really is something that benefits families and working adults.
Those who were against Amendment 70 prior to the election, one of their arguments was that the people may lose their jobs because some of these small businesses, the mom and pop shops, couldn't afford it. Did you find that to be the case?
Well, actually, no. And in fact, we haven't seen that happen in other places where the minimum wage was increased. One of the ways that we examined this was we were particularly interested in the issue of childcare, because we know that childcare providers don't have a lot of margin all the time, and so we were worried about what this would do to the cost of childcare, which we know is already pretty high in Colorado. And we found that actually in other cities, for instance, Seattle and San Francisco and Oakland, those cities did not have an increase in their childcare costs as a result of raising their minimum wage. And in fact, in some places, the neighboring cities that had a lower minimum wage had higher childcare costs. And so there really isn't a correlation between wages of the workers and the costs of the services they provide.
One of the things during the campaign we heard from employers, I'm talking about little small operations, a restaurant, whatever it may be, is that they would then have to absorb that extra cost. They would pass that along to the consumer. Do you think that's going to happen?
It's possible that there might be a tiny bump in prices, and certainly in some restaurants there might be a little bit more than in others, but we found that overall across the economy the increase on prices would be 1/10 of a percentage point, so really not a very significant gain.
Well, Colorado is not alone when it comes to raising the minimum wage this last election cycle, so we're going to hit $12 by the year 2020. Is that enough?
Well, I think that's a really good question. This is something I think that we need to go into with open eyes and do in a smart way, because again, I am concerned that some folks might lose access to benefits they need, such as health care and child care assistance, if we go even higher. And so I think that we need to look at that and do a slow and steady march as opposed to doing a gigantic jump. And I think businesses would agree that doing that in a way that allows them to meet those rising costs slowly would be helpful.
Yeah, because there are other states that have a little higher wage than $12.
Yeah.
So they may reach it sooner than we do. What's the biggest takeaway from the study when it's all said and done? What this is doing for Colorado? Or
I think one of the important things to remember is that people who are making minimum wage, when they get a wage increase, they go out and spend that money. This is money that moms can use to buy another pair of shoes or to take their kids out for a meal. And so this is money that goes right back into the local economy and helps to generate economic activity. So this is really a benefit to the state.
Very good. All right, Dr. Greenfield, thank you for
Thank you
joining
so
us. We
much.
appreciate it. Thanks for coming in today. We'll have more with Ann on Politics Unplugged when we come back in just a minute.